How many games will the Las Vegas Raiders win in 2025? What's going on, Raiders fans, as we call it, Raider Nation? Is your boy Mayo Jones here, back with another NFL record prediction. And this time we'll be doing an NFL record prediction for the Las Vegas Raiders for a 2025 NFL season, giving my thoughts and my game-by-game analysis, see which games I think the Raiders will win and which games I think the Raiders will lose. So before I give you my record predictions for the Las Vegas Raiders for a 2025 NFL season, don't forget to put a thumbs up to like the video, subscribe to my channel for more options, and comment down in your opinion below to see how many games you think the Raiders will win. Do you think how far do you think the Raiders will be? Do you think the Raiders will take a step forward this year? Do you think they'll make the playoffs, or do you think they'll miss out on the playoffs again? Let me know in the comments section below what you guys think. So week 1, they start kicking things off against the New England Patriots. Obviously, this is going to be a fun game to watch, but I got the Patriots winning this game. And the reason why is that, the Patriots, I feel like they're gonna be the more complete team than the Raiders. And the Patriots are at home in this game. And the Patriots had one of the best offseasons in football. They even improved their offensive line to protect Drake May. They even improved their defense in free agency, especially including the defensive line and the secondary. But in my opinion, I think the Patriots defense might be a lot better than the Raiders. Like, it will be. Because I think the Patriots defense will make more stops, and I think they're going to give the Raiders offense and Geno tons of issues. But I wanted to say that, that I was going to really think that, Diggs is probably going to be a problem for the Raiders secondary, because I don't really think the Raiders have the corners to match up well with them. So I feel like that's going to lead to Drake May having some time to at least like make some plays against your secondary. So yeah, I think the Patriots win this game, but I think it will be a lot closer. The next game, week 2, they got to play against the Chargers. This is another tough team, a team in the Chargers who I think they can make the playoffs in. But I'm going to say the Raiders are going to steal this game because it's a Monday night in Las Vegas where it's kind of a tough environment. I just think that the Raiders, they kind of like match up well with the Chargers really good. And they play the Chargers tough. Like the Raiders, they have the defense, their defensive line can really give Herbert some issues because they can stop the run really well. So yeah, I feel like this is one of these games where I think the Raiders defense performs really well in this game and like get after the Chargers. So yeah, and even though a few years ago the Raiders did dismantle them, so that's something you got to remember. But last year the Raiders got swept by the Chargers, but I don't see it this year. So yeah, I think the Raiders will beat the Chargers once this year. And then week 3, they got to play against the Washington Commanders. I think the Commanders will beat the Raiders just because the Commanders, I think they're just a more complete team. And also, they have the better quarterback. They're at home in this game. And I just think that, Jaden Daniels is probably just going to be too much for your defense. And also, the Commanders do have the receivers to at least, like, make some plays. Like, you talking about, like, Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz. Like, I just have a feeling that those guys that they have on offense is going to be too much for your secondary to handle because those guys against one of the worst cornerback groups in football is a mismatch. Like, the Raiders defense won't have an answer for them. And also the Commanders defense, like they don't have much of a pass rush, but they do have some corners that can really man up against an underwhelming receiving core of the Raiders, which I think the Raiders don't really have, a vertical threat at wide receiver. But I find the possibility of the man coverage that the Commanders play, you know, they they like to hold. They like to hold on to weapons. Like maybe there's a chance they can cover cover Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers. So yeah. So I think the Commanders, find a way they win this game at home. So yeah. Then next game against Chicago Bears, Week 4. This is another game that can go either way. I could see the Raiders win this game because they're at home, but I feel like the Bears could be a playoff team this year because I like the improvements that they made, especially on the offensive line to protect Caleb. And their defense is solid, especially up front and the secondary. I think this game right here is going to be fun to watch, and I think it's going to be close. But I'm going to go with the Bears here because I just think the Bears are just a much more complete team. And I just really think that, the Bears, their offensive line, I think with the new improved offensive line, I think they can run the ball with on the Raiders. I think Caleb Williams can do enough to at least throw the ball through the air, especially against your secondary. And I just don't think the Raiders secondary will have an answer for DJ Moore or Roma Dunze because those guys will have a good game, especially Colson Loveland and Cole Kmet. So yeah. I think the Bears offense is probably going to be too much for the Raiders defense to handle. So yeah. So basically, I think the Bears find a way to win this game, but I think it will be close though. The only way I think the Raiders can win this game is that if they can get a pass rush on Caleb Williams and make life difficult on him. So yeah, that's pretty much why. Especially the Raiders don't really have the corners to match up with the Bears receivers. So that's how I think the Raiders will win that game. Then Week 5 against the Colts. This is another tricky game that can go either way. Now, I don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Colts. Is it going to be Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson? Who knows? I could totally go with the Raiders because the Raiders do have a better quarterback than the Colts. But at the same time, the Colts could be a tough matchup for the Raiders, though, because the Colts do have a better roster. And I just have a feeling that they do have, a better coaching staff. But at the same time, the Colts, on defense, they're very solid. And Big Lou does a good job confusing the Raiders' offense because, because, they do a good job, getting after the Raiders offensively. And the Colts do have, a decent amount of secondary that can really play sticky against an underwhelming receiving core as well. But you know what? This tells me that the Colts will win this game because I think, I just don't know if Geno Smith is going to be good enough to at least, get after a defense like the Colts. And Big Lou is really good at, sending blitzes and all that. So I think with the Colts pass rush, it's probably going to make life difficult on Geno Smith. So, yeah. And I think the Colts offensively can move the ball against the Raiders as well. So, yeah, that's why I think the Colts will win. Next game against the Titans. This is another game that can go either way. Now, some people might say the Titans can win because the Raiders' secondary is not good and Cam Ward can take advantage of it. But the game could be close, it can be competitive, but I'm going to say the Raiders are going to win this game just because I think the Raiders, offensively got the better quarterback. And I just feel like, I feel like that the Raiders' offensive line can stalemate the Titans' pass rush and keep the Raiders' offense on balance where they can run the ball. And on top of that, I just think the Raiders' defensive line is going to give the Titans' offense some issues and Cam Ward some issues. So, yeah. So, basically, I think the Raiders will win this game at home. And plus, they got the better coaching staff and quarterback. So, yeah. And I think they're kind of the more complete team. So, yeah, that's pretty much why I think the Raiders will win. Next game, Week 7 against Kansas City Chiefs. I think they'll lose to the Chiefs because the game's in Arrowhead. But here's the thing. And the Chiefs are just a more complete team, have the better quarterback, better coaching staff. They're at home. And I just think the Chiefs, the Raiders could have at least beaten the Chiefs at least one game last year. So I think the Chiefs, the Raiders, play the Chiefs kind of tough though because they could have just beaten the Chiefs, but it wasn't the case at all. But maybe there's a chance the Raiders can steal a game versus the Chiefs, but I don't really know. But yeah, then they get the bye week 8. Then after that they play against the Jags. This is another game that can go either way. The Jags is tricky. Now, the Jags got good weapons on offense. They got a good quarterback. They got Liam Coleman as a head coach. Their offensive line's a bit sketchy, but their pass rush is okay on defense, but their pass defense is not great. But I don't really know. Both of their secondaries are a bit sketchy, and they both got great defensive lines. And the Raiders' offensive line is kind of average though. I don't really know. It's kind of tough to say. I think this game will be close, and I think this could be a shootout though. But I'm gonna go with the Raiders here to win this game. Now, Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas could be a problem because the Raiders don't really have the cover guys to cover the receivers. I just have a feeling that the Raiders, they have the better coach and they're at home. And I just think the Raiders have a better offensive line, which I think they can run the ball on Jacksonville. They can throw the ball against the Jags. And, on top of that, their defensive line can totally give Trevor Lawrence and the Jags offensive fits. So, yeah, I think the Raiders' defensive line can at least stalemate the Jags' offensive line and overwhelm that as well. So, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if Jacksonville won. I wouldn't really rule it out, but I just feel like the Raiders will win because they're at home. They got extra time to prepare and all that. So, yeah, I think the Raiders will win that game. Next game against the Denver Broncos, a Thursday night football in Denver. I think the Broncos will beat the Raiders once. So I'm going to give the Broncos a win right here just because the Broncos, typically play the Raiders tough. And I just really think that, the Broncos, they're at home and I think they're the better team. And they have the better coaching staff and they're at home. So, yeah, so I think the Broncos will win that game at home on Thursday on a short week. Then they have to play a Monday night game against the Dallas Cowboys. Now they're coming off a Thursday game. Now this is another Monday night in Vegas where it's tough to play at. I got the Cowboys winning this game. Now, the reason why I think the Cowboys will win is because I think the Cowboys, will be better in the passing game. And I just really think that George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb is just going to be too much for your secondary to handle. Because I just don't see how the Raiders are going to cover the Cowboys. Because I just really think that, the Cowboys offensively can stay balanced. But I think, their pass rush is very solid. Like, I think they can get after Geno, cause some mistakes. And they have a really good secondary. They have good corners that can really get after you and all that. I feel like Eberflus will have a good game plan for the Raiders offensively. Because I feel like the only way the Raiders can win this game is that their defense can stop the Cowboys' running game because that's the Cowboys' weakness. So, yeah. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Raiders won. But I just have a feeling that Dallas will win because they're just a more complete team. And they got the better quarterback. So, yeah, I like the Cowboys here. And then week 12 against the Cleveland Browns. I think they'll beat the Browns because I'm not sure who's playing quarterback for the Browns. It's going to be Shador Sanders. It's going to be Dylan Gabriel. It's going to be Joe Flacco. Or it's going to be Kenny Pickett. I don't know. Raiders has got the better quarterback. They're at home, better coaching staff. Like, yeah. And also, I think the Browns might be one of the worst teams in football. So I think the Raiders defense can take advantage of an overwhelming offensive line in Cleveland. And I think the Raiders offense will throw the ball better in Cleveland. So I think the Raiders win that game. Week 13 against the Los Angeles Chargers. I think, like I said, they'll split with the Chargers, so that's a loss right there. That's a win for the Chargers because, Chargers usually play the Raiders tough, and Chargers are going to have much to play. We'll have more to play for because they'll probably be in the playoffs, while the Raiders, they could be, but they probably won't. Chargers is a much more physical team, and they just got the better quarterback as well, and they're at home. So, yeah, that's why I think the Chargers will win that game. Week 14 against the Broncos. Typically, you play the Broncos hard, so I'm just gonna say the Raiders steal this one here just because you typically play the Broncos hard. But even last year, you guys got swept by them, but I don't see it this year because I think this is a game the Raiders could steal one. Week 15 against the Philadelphia Eagles in Philly. Actually, I got the Eagles winning because the Eagles are at home. They got the better coaching staff. Um, there's they're a more complete team, and I just feel like the weapons that the Eagles have offensively is going to be too much for your secondary to handle, and I just don't think the Raiders' defense is going to be able to handle an overpowering offensive line of Philly. Like, I think Philly can at least stalemate the Raiders' pass rush, and I think the Eagles do have a better defense, which I think they'll make more plays. I think they'll get after the Raiders. I feel like they'll stop their running game. And I feel like their young corners can find a way with their secondary can at least play sticky against, the Raiders receiving core that's not great. So, yeah, I think Philly finds a way to win that game. Next game, week 16 against the Texans. Obviously, they'll lose to the Texans. So that's the Texans win right there. I mean, Texans, they're at home, better quarterback, better coaching staff. They're a more complete team. And they're the best defense as well. And I think their defense will make more plays and all that. So, yeah, which I think they'll get after the Raiders. And I feel like they'll stop their running game and their passing game. And Nico Collins and Christian Kirk is probably going to be just too much for your secondary to handle. And Stroud might be too much for your defense. So, yeah, I think the Texans win that game in Houston. Week 17 against the New York Giants. This is an interesting game. I can totally see the Giants win this game because the Giants do have some weapons on offense that can totally give the Raiders defense problems. Now their offensive line is very weak, but their pass rush, their defensive line is really good. Like, I'm talking about Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau. Like, that front four is really good, which I think that can really give the Raiders problems. I can see that though. Like, it could go. It's gonna be fun to watch, but I'm gonna say Raiders win because they're at home in this game, and who knows who's gonna be starting quarterback for the Giants? It's gonna be Jackson Dart, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston. Like, who knows? If this was Russell Wilson versus Geno, that would be awesome. But I think the Raiders find a way to win this game at home. And then finally, Week 18 against the Chiefs. Depending on the Chiefs, need a win to get to the playoffs. But if the Chiefs decide to rest their starters, I'll go the Raiders. But if the Chiefs don't, then I'll probably go the Chiefs to just sweep the season series. And I'm sticking with that just because the Chiefs will have more to play for, and they'll already be in the playoffs and all that. So, yeah. So, I think the Chiefs will win that game. So, ultimately, I have the Raiders going 6-11, which that's pretty much disappointing. um, is based off due to the schedule, because when you look at the Raiders' schedule, it's tough because they have to play the Patriots, who is an improved team. They got to play the Chargers twice. They got to play the Chiefs twice. They got to play the Broncos twice. They got to play the Commanders, the Bears. They even got to play the Cowboys and the Eagles. And I feel like the only good teams they don't really play is like the Ravens and the Bills, and they don't play the Bengals, and they don't really play the NFC North, or they don't play the Bucks, and they don't play the NFC West. So yeah, so basically, say I think the Raiders can go somewhere from like 6 to 8 wins this year, and I'm going with 6 just because of a tougher schedule, and I I like the Raiders, and I feel like they're probably going to be an interesting team, but there's too many holes though, because they really need they really need to improve at wide receiver to complement Jacoby Myers, because they really need to work on that, adding a vertical threat. The offensive line is kind of average, but it's not really close to being good as it's supposed to be. Defensively, I'm not really a huge fan of like the entire back half of the defense. And I just really think that the scheme is probably average, and that's not really my favorite style of defense, like in 2025. And I feel like the Raiders really need to improve their secondary a little bit. Like maybe they need to do it throughout the draft next year or free agency. Like who knows? But I feel like 6-11 sounds about right for the Raiders. But I hope they prove me wrong. But that's how I see it. But I feel like if the Raiders can at least have one more offseason to get better, then I feel like this team can probably take a step forward and probably like be a playoff team next year. So yeah, like I like some the Raiders pieces. I love Geno. I love Pete Carroll. I love Chip Kelly. I like some of their players. Like we're probably gonna see what they can do with their young players, but I feel like this is a year that they won't be that much better in 2025, and I don't think they're there yet. I say maybe give the Raiders at least one more year to like get back in the playoffs. So yeah. Well, yeah, so that's my recommendation for the Raiders is 6-11. Well, if you disagree with me, just let me know in the comments section below what you guys think. You think so? Yeah. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to put a thumbs up to like the video, and you can subscribe to my channel to at least see more of my videos. So yeah, it's Emmanuel Jones from Big Fan. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys later. Peace.